There's a gate in Middle-earth that doesn't just block passage, it radiates threat. It looms not as a wall, but as a warning, a vast barrier of iron anchored between two mountains forged in shadow. The Black Gate of Mordor. But here's something few ever consider. The Black Gate wasn't always there to keep enemies out. For a time, it was meant to keep something in. So who built it? And why does its story serve as a reflection of the change of dominion in Middle-earth? Let's dive into this question and find out. Chapter 1. The First Gate. To understand the story of the Black Gate, or Morannon as it was called, we have to go back, not just to the Third Age or to the War of the Ring, but all the way to the shadowed centuries of the Second Age. When Sauron first took Mordor as his stronghold, around the year 1000 of the Second Age, he immediately began to fortify its borders. The range of Ephel-Duath to the west and Ered Lithwi to the north formed a natural barrier, but a gap remained, the pass between those mountains. That gap was dangerous. It was open and left Sauron's stronghold vulnerable. Something had to be done about this weakness. So to guard it, Sauron raised the Black Gate, a vast fortification of dark iron and stone, sealed shut to all but his armies. This was not just a mere gate denying entrance from unwelcomed guests. It was a symbol of Sauron's dominion, of his control over every shadowed inch of Mordor. A barrier forged by Sauron's servants, orcs, slaves from the east, and dark craftsmen, powered by the furnaces of Orodruin. It became the only major entrance into Mordor's northwest, a gate so secure, so immense, that armies would avoid it entirely. A massive door into dark territory, a warning to the men of Gondor. But its history would not stay intact. Chapter 2. The Fall of Sauron and the Watch of Gondor. At the end of the Second Age, during the War of the Last Alliance, Sauron was defeated. His fortress of Barad-dûr was thrown down, and with him, his control over Mordor was shattered temporarily. This meant that the initial version of the Black Gate was destroyed, or at least abandoned and broken. And in the aftermath, the men of Gondor took up a grim duty. They seized the opportunity to establish their own checkpoint for the passage into Mordor. So rather than leave Mordor unguarded, they built the Towers of the Teeth, Narcost and Carcost, at the very mouth of the pass. Their purpose wasn't to stop an invading force. Their purpose was to keep evil in, because Mordor still festered. Shadows remained. Beasts crawled in the ashes. Servants of Sauron fled into the mountains and tunnels. And the people of Gondor knew they hadn't killed the shadow. They had only scattered it. So they stood watch. For over 1,000 years, Gondor kept the towers manned. They did not rebuild the gate, not fully, but they reinforced the pass, stationed soldiers, and treated it as a prison wall. The vigilance of Gondor could last for 1,000 years when evil licked its wounds, but it could not last forever, and eventually Sauron turned his gaze towards the passage and the Black Gate once again. By the 21st century of the Third Age, as Gondor declined in power and attention turned westward, the Towers of the Teeth were abandoned. And as Mordor began to stir again, a new age for the Gate was approaching. Chapter 3. The Reforging of the Gate. When Sauron returned in secret, first to Dol Guldur, then later to Mordor, his first priority was not conquest, it was containment. He needed time, he needed strength, and above all, he needed to make Mordor impenetrable. So he rebuilt the Black Gate. This time, it wasn't just a blockade, it was a trap. He rebuilt it wider, stronger, anchored between the very towers Gondor had left behind. Iron was hauled from Gorgoroth, glowing hot from the forges. The air rang with the clatter of chains, the hiss of molten metal, the roars of overseers echoing off the hills. Orcs toiled without rest, driven by whip and terror. Slaves from the east, Haradrim, Easterlings and others, were dragged in by the hundreds, used for labor, then discarded like waste when their bodies gave out. The gate rose slowly, cruelly, not in days or weeks, but over long, black years. It wasn't built to stop armies. It was built to break spirits. Every rivet, every slab, every bar of iron was part of a message. Sauron had returned. Mordor was sealed, and no one could enter or escape. By the time the War of the Ring began, the Black Gate was complete, a vast, fortified entrance that spanned the mouth of the Morannon. The air around it was poisoned with fumes. The sky above it was never clear. Above the gate, towers bristled with siege weapons. Behind it, thousands of orcs and greater beasts of shadow gathered in rank, shoulder to shoulder, eyes gleaming in the dark. And deep beneath it, some say the foundations ran like veins through the mountain roots, unbreakable, unknowable, built not just into stone, but into the land itself. Chapter 4, The Gate's Final War. At the climax of the War of the Ring, the army of the West marched to the Black Gate, not to defeat Sauron, but to distract him, to buy time for Frodo and Sam. They stood before it, outnumbered, surrounded, their banners small against the shadow, and it opened, not from within, but from above, like the jaw of a predator finally releasing its hunger. Trolls poured out first, massive and near mindless. Then the orcs came, screaming into the wind, their armor clattering like broken teeth. Behind them, the eye burned brighter than ever, fixed on the battlefield like a flame that could never look away. The Battle of the Morannon was fought in the dust outside its walls, on cursed ground where grass no longer grew. And when the ring was destroyed, the gate, like everything Sauron touched, fell. It cracked, the towers shattered, the mouth of Sauron perished, and the long black mouth that had once spoken only in silence went silent forever. Closing, the shadow of the Black Gate. So who built the Black Gate? The answer is layered. Sauron built it first, in the Second Age, to guard his dominion. Gondor rebuilt its towers to watch and warn, and Sauron rebuilt it again to seal his fortress and command fear. But the gate was never just a wall. It was a reflection of who held power and dominion, of what they feared and what they wanted the world to fear in return. And though it lies broken now, the ground still bears its shape, still remembers the sound of it opening. And in the silence that followed its fall, the world exhaled. But in the minds of those who stood before it, and in the stories passed down after, the memory of that vast iron moor endures, a shadow on the land, and a warning of the will that once forged it. Even now, some say, the wind over the Morannon whistles like hinges creaking open, as if the gate still remembers too.